Truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker. Preteens hold unprecedented influence on culture, more so than at any other time in history. Yet anyone who has spent time in children's or middle school ministry has stories of preteens who sit against the back wall, roll their eyes at whatever leaders say, and barely tolerate the hour, or of some who just don't show up at all. Today's preteens are getting lost in transition as they shift from childhood to adolescence, a unique and challenging time when they're not quite one thing and not quite the other. In his new book, Caught in Between, Dan Scott draws from his experiences in both education and ministry, adds in latest research findings, sums up conversations every ministry leader is having, and crafts a comprehensive plan to engage your preteen to ensure they have what they need to build an authentic faith. Dan Scott has been working with kids for over 20 years as a teacher, pastor, and communicator. He is currently the director of 252 Kids and Preteen Curriculum at Orange. Dan and his wife Jenna have 4 kids, Liam, Ellie, Addie, and Tay, who keep them very busy and completely up to date with all the things in the elementary, middle, and high school worlds. To find out more about Dan, you can follow him on Twitter at DanScott77 or at the same address on Instagram at DanScott77. Here to talk about his book, Caught in Between, Engage Your Preteen Before They Check Out, is Dan Scott. Dan, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thanks so much for having me.
Dan, I think I shared with you that I heard myself more than one time as we were watching Marlon Perkins' Wild Kingdom, that sometimes the male lion eats his young not because he's hungry.
Yeah.
And in the preteen years of the 2 children that I raised in the preteen period, it was probably the most dramatically difficult time in trying to understand, and I was in technology. I was in the technology business, but the technology that they were now embracing for the first time at their level was at a level was very different than I was at the corporate level, where we were putting in payroll systems and we were putting in production systems and the technology that we're using for. We didn't really understand how technology was working its way into a preteen's identity and how impactful it was. We just thought it was we went from Reader Rabbit to Game Boy and PlayStations and Xboxes and all these other things. And
absolutely,
you know, it was just a time of great confusion, and it was as if there was a diabolical plot. That there was this new device, a phone that they could text on, or a device where they could connect with their friends, and they knew their parents weren't smart enough to figure it out. So when we look at today, it's sexting. And my daughter's 29 now. Sexting was something that occurred in her growing up period, in her preteen and teen years. That came to pass, but it was just young boys making a pass at a pretty girl. But it still fell into the category of sexting because it was inappropriate dialogue.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is something that I think that many parents are engaging in, providing with a phone. Their justification is always the same. With the school shootings and with the problems that are happening, I need to have a way to get in touch with my children. Therefore, I'm going to give them this device. But this device is a gateway that, unless it is used
to everything
in a way, it is as much a blessing as a tool of the devil.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So what led you to dive into, first of all, learning a second language? Because in order to talk to a preteen, you have to be bilingual.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a whole new world.
It really is. It really is.
Help us frame. Normally, I use this first segment to get to know you,
Yeah.
your background and your faith journey and your testimony. But this is such a huge issue, and I only get you for an hour. I want the full hour
All right.
talking about this issue that people are just they're going bald. I think male pattern baldness is because people are pulling their hair out because of the preteen dilemma.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of it started when I came on staff at Orange. Actually, in the church that I was in, where I was a children's pastor prior to coming on staff here, we started to notice this trend, this shift in the way our fourth and fifth graders, even sixth graders, were responding to, child education in the church. We had a small group based ministry, super relational. We loved it. We thought it was great, but we really started to notice our own attendance patterns start to, fall. And then we also just noticed that the kids who were showing up weren't really engaging. And so it caused us, even at that church level, to figure out how can we change what we're doing to reach this generation that seems to be responding in a different way. And so as a children's pastor, I went on a journey to kind of figure it out. My background is in elementary education, so I have some child development in my undergrad, and then I have a theology degree. And so I was kind of started just joining all these worlds and starting to figure it out. And then when I took the job at Orange, this was one of the things that I was sort of tasked with, helping them figure out as well. And in the past few years, we've just talked to church leaders and parents all over the country, all over the world, really. And everyone was saying the same sort of thing about their fifth graders, especially. And so that was sort of what led us on this journey to help church leaders figure out what to do with this generation, because the world has changed. I mean, you talked about, it went from the Atari to the Nintendo to the Game Boy to the Xbox to it being online, and we give these kids, we think we're just giving them a phone device, but we're giving them access to whatever they want to find with their data plan all over the world. And the world has shifted. 2007 was a big year for the globe when it comes to technology. That was the year that the iPhone came out. It was the year that big data was made possible by different software that was developed. And we've sort of entered this age of acceleration where the world is having trouble keeping up with itself. And these are where our kids are growing up, where what we see in market that they can purchase is already obsolete because there's something else being created in a warehouse, in a research and development center someplace else that's about to hit the market and make that thing, yesterday's news. And so our kids are just kind of growing up in a world that's very different from ours, even from, your kids that went through that who started, when Facebook and all of that was just getting started, and now it's Snapchat and Facebook and Instagram and a new one, TikTok. You can't even keep up with it. And our churches and parents, they are pulling their hair out, and they're just asking lots of questions. How do I help engage these kids with the truth of God's word? Which we feel is the most important thing we can engage them with, but they're not even engaging in anything that we do. So that's sort of where it came from, and what we hope to help churches figure out, to give them a strategy and a game plan when it comes to this unique age group.
We talk to parents, a lot of parents. We talk to the unplugged parents. We talk to the parents that have the basket that's at the front of the house. That they drop their, that when they come home from school, they drop their electronics in.
Yeah.
And then until after they have the family meal, there's some social time, there's some reading time, there's some play time, until after the family meal and the proof that the homework is done, then the electronics are given back. So there's some structure.
Yeah.
There's the families that we talk to who have no televisions, have no internet, have no
Yeah.
iPhones, and how they're raising their children in what we would have called back in my day that homeschool, quote unquote, cultish environment that
Yeah.
says we're a little bit Amish, we're a little bit homeschool,
Yeah.
we're a little Bob Jones, we're a little,
Yes.
there was that kind of how do we navigate not being grannies, but how do we educate,
Yeah.
and the big issue was social skills,
Mhm.
and if all their friends when they go to church on Sunday have all these devices, but they're homeschooled and they're isolated, are they then cut out of a social connection,
Yeah.
and is that going to stunt their development? Maybe at 67, my development was stunted because we had garden hoses, stick balls, and
Yeah.
the street lights that told us when to come home. And as far as the telephone was concerned, it was kind of a pinkish color. We had one in the house, and it was
Yep.
only when my grandmother called from New York to check in on the family did the family gather around waiting for the phone to be passed from one grandchild to the next
Yes.
to talk to somebody that we couldn't understand her accent,
Yeah.
and we can only pick up every fourth or fifth word, and my father would prompt us with words to say to her that would convey to her that we loved her, whether it was in Hungarian or it was in Yiddish, or depending
Yeah.
on who we were talking to, how to communicate to them, because they wanted to stay connected, but we had a language barrier and we had a time and space barrier. But pinball machines were like the big craze. Then you had the electronic games, Centipede and Pac-Man, and this was kind of the precursor to
Yes.
Atari. This was all the precursor
Yes. Yeah.
to all of this, and so technology has been targeting this consumer group because they hold the purse strings that are tied
Yeah.
to the apron strings.
Absolutely.
And mom gets that apron string pulled enough times, and they hear enough times about this new device, or what do you want for your birthday, or what do you want for Christmas, or what do you want for Hanukkah? And it's always the same technology, that this
Yeah.
is a consumer base that
Absolutely.
is being driven by an adult pocketbook, but are key influencers and are being developed, and their communication skills. I'm going through a
Yeah.
personal struggle where I have a social media company that they send me acronyms every day as if I'm
Yeah.
supposed to know what CTR is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's a different language for sure.
Click-through rate.
Yeah.
So now that I know that CTR is click-through rate, I still don't know what click-through rate means. So
Yeah.
it's this vernacular, it's
Yeah.
this language.
Yeah.
I'll share one funny story with you. When my mother first got an iPhone, she would send a text message because she was so proud of herself. She's 92.
Oh, wow.
And she would send a text message and she said, "Your Aunt Eddie died, LOL."
Oh, no.
And I would call my mother and say, why is that funny that she
Yeah.
died? And she said, "What are you talking about? It's sad." And I said, LOL means laugh out loud. She said, "Oh, I thought it meant lots of love."
Oh, yeah.
So, there's this transition of us trying to connect.
Absolutely.
And it's more than just caught in between of getting a hold of your preteen. It's about us as the adult
Absolutely.
being able to connect in with the vernacular
For
of
sure.
our children that are learning a binary language,
Yeah.
what we would consider to be a binary language, zeros and ones,
Yeah.
communicated in a whole different way. So what do we do?
So there's a couple things that you've mentioned there that are interesting to me. You are you are right about the purchasing power of a preteen. That's what's so unprecedented, that we just kind of live in this, and many of us live in an affluent world. Our primary ministry is to Western kids who are in the 1% of the world's wealth, and marketing agencies and businesses and companies know that. I mean, I think it's like a $20 billion industry, the preteen world, and they know that if they can get a customer of a 10-year-old, an 11-year-old, a 12-year-old, that there's a really good chance that they're going to have a lifelong customer with them. And so if I can get an iPhone into the hands of an 11-year-old and they interact with it and they enjoy it and they like it, they're going to be an Apple user, until Apple doesn't exist anymore, if that ever happens. So that is 100% true. The technology changes that are happening. My son is a gamer. My oldest, he's 15 years old, and he's into Fortnite, and he's on the Xbox platform. And I listen to him play with his friends, because they're all on these headsets and they're all talking to each other. And I only hear his side of the conversation, obviously, but we listen in from time to time. And what I'm seeing is yes, I could be scared that, like, oh my word, they're out on this thing and they're in this world, this Fortnite world, and they're doing all of these things. But I'm also listening to him organize his friends into groups, and seeing these leadership skills that I don't get to necessarily see day in and day out while he's at school. I'm sure that he, is great. He's a great student, but I get to hear him do all of these things. And so, to one of your points where you're like, should we just fear it and shun it and just bury our heads in the sand and say, no, we're just gonna be a non-technology house? I'm not sure that is actually setting up our kids for a great future. I mean, this is the digital native generation. They are going to use technology for the rest of their lives. And in some ways, technology is an extension of our personhood, where, at the drop of a hat, if you have a question, I can now figure out the answers to that question. That sort of thing. And if we can help kids discern the use of the technology and discern how to even navigate all the information that is coming at them, we're going to do them a service. But they have to learn, and they have to learn in a safe environment, which hopefully is our home. And so we just have a really open communication policy with our kids when it comes to technology. We know their passwords. We can, hop on there at any time. We have guards, lockdowns in our house, and we use Circle with Disney. Just ways that, we can sort of put some boundaries in place to help protect them on some level. And on the other level, are they going to make mistakes? Probably. But we are at least we have a communication open with them. As to the vocabulary, you're right. We've had to learn, we assume when we talk to our kids that they are learning how we learned when we were their age, that they are thinking and processing life the way we did when we were their age. And it's just not true. I mean, you talk about the phone. I mean, I couldn't imagine. I'm one of those, like, I love being on stage in front of people and having these conversations, but like one-on-one, like if I have to pick up the phone and call someone, like I sort of get like anxious. Like it's just one of those weird things. And I remember, like, when I was, entering the world of dating, and I had to like call a girl, dad was going to pick up the phone, right? Like that they don't even have to deal with that anymore. Like, because they all know each other's phone numbers, they all know each other's, Instagram handles or Snapchat handles, and everything has changed. And we need to realize that as parents and as church leaders, that the world that they're navigating is completely different. And we have so much homework that we need to do. The acronyms are changing all the time. The LOLs and the BRBs and there are new ones happening all of the time. And, you need to know some preteens in your life that you can ask, like, hey, what does this mean? What does that mean? And if they're not going to tell you, that means that you should probably look it up because it's probably not very good.
Well, what you're advocating is a reverse mentoring program.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Is
They have
really to
so
have
much that we can learn from. Yeah.
to develop a program within our churches, within our communities, to allow young people to come in, and you're not an old guy, but I would be considered, with white hair and a white beard, an old guy, but to come in and mentor us on what do these things mean, and what is it that we do, and why does it excite us, and how now. What's so interesting is that being a child of the 50s, I went to college at 16, graduated college at 20. I wasn't able to vote, I wasn't able to drink, I wasn't able to be drafted, but I was in college. And I knew nothing about the social world of being a 16-year-old at a 55,000 person college campus. So I didn't know the language, I didn't know the lifestyle, I didn't know anything, but I had people that took me under the wing to show me. As I look back, some of them are just getting out of prison. Some of them are still political prisoners. I was definitely radicalized as and who was it that said that if your 20s you weren't a liberal and by your 40s you weren't a capitalist, then you haven't lived. I lived that exact life. In my 20s, I was a liberal. In my 40s, I became a capitalist. That's the reality of life. But as you look at the preteen today, one of the things I'm finding, and I'm very, very close to a particular family that I've watched all of the children in the family grow up. And all the children had their own particular interest developed. And the concept of, well, I love all my children the same, I treat all my children the same, that's baloney. It's been baloney. It's never been true. It wasn't true in the Bible. It's not true today. And anybody who says it is only saying it to make themselves feel better. They're talking to themselves because nobody's believing a word that's coming out of their mouth, that you actually have 4 children and you treat them all the same. Okay, not going to happen. But I've had the opportunity, I've watched Shark Tank, and I've seen 11, 12, 10, 11, and 12 and 13-year-olds come on with technology pitches where that was developed in them because of the school system having robotics programs, or the school system having science programs, or them having where they're teaching them binary code, and they're teaching them things that we never had exposure to in our lifetime. So the educational system is introducing them to the underbelly of technology, which is creating excitement in them that they want to embrace, and we don't understand it because it is above not just our pay grade, but it's above our intellectual construct, because you and I were educated with the philosophers, with the sociologists, with the psychologists, with the literature of our college education. I have a Bachelor of Science in Education from Penn State University, and I'm an educator. I'm the head of a teaching ministry. We are not a prophetic ministry. We are not an evangelical ministry. We are a teaching ministry. This television program that we broadcast 3 hours a day is the broadcast branch of our teaching ministry. That's why we cover a wide variety of topics, because it's teaching opportunities to expose people to what's out there. Nobody goes to the library anymore and walks the stacks and goes through the Dewey Decimal System. You go on the internet and search, and so we bring these experiences to it. We've got to go to commercial break, but I want to keep our audience completely connected to this, because if it's not happening to you in your family today, like myself, I have a 29-year-old, but it's going to happen with my grandchildren. And when I connect with my grandchildren, they're going to come into a digital age that I didn't see until my 40s. They're going to see it with the digital toys that are going to be their pacifier. may have some digital connection to being able to give me a readout to a device that tells me what their temperature is, connected to their pacifier. And I'm no longer going to have to own a thermometer because I have an intelligent pacifier that's going to give me indicators, key performance indicators. The technology is advancing way past us. By the time they are in their preteen years, they're going to know more about technology than I could ever imagine. And I'm a trained technologist, have been in technology for over 40 years, and it has far surpassed me. We're talking with Dan Scott, author of Caught in Between, Engage Your Preteen Before They Check Out. This is, we spent a lot of time talking about the millennials, but these are the millennial influencers, because the millennials are having children today, and this generation that they're raising is going to be the most powerful, consumer-driven, most impactful area that's causing mom and dad to spend their money, and what it is that you need to have in your home. It's no longer the bouncer that you hang in the doorway that keeps them busy all the time. Right? It's going to be technology, and it's going to be televisions, and it's going to be things that they're drawn to, and we have to find a way to reach them, connect with them, and understand them. And I don't think that we have enough resources, and that's why I'm sharing with you Caught in Between. Engage your preteen before they check out with Dan Scott. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk into some of the methods that he promotes in the book that we can use to practically connect with our preteen, and how we can understand and catch them before we have to let them go. We'll be right back.
Not everything that makes the headlines has biblical importance, but many events that happen around the world do, and you never hear about them. Igniting a Nation is pleased to teach Revealing Prophecy every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. at the Marriott 280 in Birmingham. We will cover worldwide events and insider information that will connect the dots of what's happening around the world with biblical prophecy. If you happen to miss a class, we'll televise each week's class at 10 o'clock Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our social media outlets. Copies of the teachings will also be available to purchase on our website at www.ignitinganation.com. The Lord meets you right where you are, and so does Igniting a Nation's new live streaming outlets. You can now watch Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Prophecy Revealed simulcast live each Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Vimeo, Periscope, and through our website, www.ignitinganation.com. No matter what device you are using, our program will automatically scale so you won't have to miss a single program. And if you happen to miss an episode, you can always subscribe to the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel and access over 1,000 interviews and never miss your favorite authors, special guests, and topics that interest you the most.
There are lots of ways to see Israel, but nothing compares to seeing the land of the book and the people of the book through the eyes of two Jewish believers who can take you on a journey that will bring the entire Bible to life. When you join Rabbi Eric Walker and his #1 rated tour guide, Edo Canaan, in Israel, you'll experience incredible teachings, first-class accommodations, and actually walk where Jesus walked. You will experience the Bible transforming from black and white into living color, and you will never see the Bible in the same way again. For more information, visit us at www.ignitinganation.com/events.
The Lord contends with what contends with you, and Igniting a Nation is committed to bringing to light each and every issue that faces a believer's life. Our live stream programming and teachings take you on a journey to finding biblical truth from a wide variety of experts who share their insights into a deeper walk with the Lord. We have assembled the most comprehensive panel of experts in the fields of prophecy, caregiving, healing from trauma, shame, and abuse, and so much more. We continue to expand our teachings and programming to meet your needs. We're committed to healing the nations with biblical truth. Visit www.ignitinganation.com to develop a deeper walk with the Lord and start your journey to a transformed life. The Bible commands us to study to show ourselves approved, but most study using Bible study tools and not actually studying the Bible chapter and verse. Igniting a Nation is pleased to present Revealing the Bible, recorded and taught each week before a live audience. We take you deeper into the actual Bible and verse in both Hebrew and English and connect the dots between the Old and New Testament. You can attend our 2 classes in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, or watch the program every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our other simulcast outlets. For more information, visit www.ignitinganation.com/events.
Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Dan Scott, author of Caught in Between, Engage Your Preteens Before They Check Out. Dan, welcome back to the program.
Thanks.
Dan, contained within the pages of this book are some really amazing foundational understandings. First of all, what is the life of a preteen? And I don't think we actually examine that. We navigate from childhood into adolescence, into preteen, and we just do the best we can one day at a time, one moment at a time, dealing with the crisis du jour. But from a strategic standpoint, I don't think we look at raising children as a strategic endeavor. Now, I have friends that do. And the friends that do have the most wonderful, socially adjusted, loving, biblically based, serving on college scholarships for academics and citizenship, and they're great kids, and each one of them are completely different. One's a gamer, one's a golfer, one's a javelin, a girl, javelin shot put. And the other one has such a heart for people that she was like a 4.6, got a perfect score on her ACT, has a full academic scholarship, honors college at the University of Alabama. And their family had a strategic plan from the day they got married, that their kids were going to memorize scripture, that their kids were going to be involved in church activities. And so they all have technology, but most of them use it for technology to blog, to reach other kids, to connect, to get involved in things like First Priority or other organizations, Campus Crusade or Crew, or those kind of things. And so it laid a foundation that the family structured their development, so they didn't know, they knew they were different than their friends. They also became more selective in who they had as friends, and it gave them a lot more discernment because the family had a plan. So walk me through the pages of Caught in Between and how we should understand and approach this intermediary period before they actually become teens and smell different, act different, and get involved in a more adult, because high school today is not a teenage community. It is a young adult community. And it's completely different than the high school that I went to.
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the biggest things that we have to remember when it comes to like just kids in general, I love that you talked about the strategy of parenting and how, you know, I have 4 kids too, and each one is so, you know, when he talks about raising a child in the way he should go, the way he or she should go. That's not how I want them to go. It's how I see God working in their lives and their interests and their passions and you know, joining him on the journey that he's taking them. But one of the things that we realize when it comes to child development is that none of it is a straight line. Like we totally wish it was. We wish, you know, we can predict that some things are going to start to happen at certain times of certain ages, but really, I mean, even if I look at my own kids, they all have hit different milestones at different times and have needed something different from me as a parent and from their teachers or their schools or whatever that is. And the most vulnerable times of a child's life are in the times of transition from one stage to the next stage. And the preteen years are important in that a child actually plays a role in that transition. So there's a big transition from preschool to elementary when they start school for the first time and they enter this classroom, and that's a massive transition. But they're a kindergartner. Everything is being done for them or to them, and they're just along for the ride. Where now as a preteen, you have a little bit more autonomy. Your attitude carries a little bit more weight. You can dig your feet in the sand, and it's going to be very hard for me to make you do anything. And how you as the preteen responds to parents, authorities, that's on them, and helping them navigate that. And so, what we've found is it's in these transitions where kids are starting to check out of specifically what in our context, churches, and the preteen one is really a major leave. And it is because we're not necessarily adapting our programs and our church ministry strategy to the changing needs of the child. Elementary ministry in a church is the longest time period that they're in the same environment. So from kindergarten to 5th or 6th grade, depending on your school district and how that works in your church, that is a long time for anyone to be doing the same thing, especially as a kid, because all of a sudden, if you're a 5th grader and you're hyper aware that you're growing up and that you are getting older, and a kindergartner is doing the same thing that you're doing as an 11-year-old, you're going to be like, wait a second, I'm a big kid now, and I'm now doing something that like this little kindergartner is doing. And so some of it, they're just reacting against the fact that they've just been doing the same thing for so long. And so I'm looking at, through Caught in Between, what are some simple ways that churches and families and parents can, A, and 2, adapt what they're doing in their church ministries to help meet the growing needs of this unique group of people.
So if you were to pick 3 things that a church could immediately implement that would start moving them, navigating them. This is a rudder of a ship. So when you turn the rudder, the ship starts to move, but it takes a while for it to get there. So I have to be able to implement change that's going to help me navigate. I also have to budget, because it's my expectation expectation that there's going to be some expense that I'm going to incur if I'm going to cater to preteens. I'm going to have to introduce technology into that equation as well.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I mean, a church can do some things that don't cost much, but a lot of it could just be time, and maybe space that you designate for these kids. If there's a possibility to get let's say you're in elementary, your 4th and 5th graders, if there's a way in your church to create an environment that's just for them, that would be great, for them to feel like they have their own space, and then ask them what they want from that space. They live in this world where they, if they have technology, they can customize the screen, they can customize their case, their room, they can, even like, I don't know about the schools, in all the different parts of the country, but I know for my kids, they're even able to decide how they're evaluated on information that they've learned, based on their skill set. So there's a lot of autonomy that preteens are already experiencing. Yet when it comes to church, often everything is just like, well, this is what we're learning, and this is what we're doing, and this is how we're doing it. No questions asked. And if we can just change, hey, this week, yeah, we're learning about this thing, but how we experience that and how we talk about that, we have a few options. We could, use our phones and make a video of this Bible story or we can interview people and how this Bible story impacts their lives and then show this video to the rest of the group. And, those are things that you can do even because you just have a phone, your small group leader has a phone in the pocket. One of the should do is start to create some sort of relational ministry with these groups. What they're going to need, because they're going to start to pull away from their parents, and they're going to ask a lot of questions. They're going to start, because their minds are being awakened to abstract thought, that life isn't as black and white as they once experienced it, that there are nuances to what's happening in these stories. They're going to have a lot of questions. And they're going to need people to help them navigate those questions. And mom and dad are still going to be the primary influence in their lives. That is research that's founded all over the place. But that doesn't mean that they're going to go to mom and dad first. And if there are other trusted adults in your church that you can put into the lives of your preteens, this is a crucial time for them to realize that, it takes the body of Christ to raise these kids in faith. That we are all part of raising the next generation. And so play small group leaders who know these kids week in and week out and go to their soccer games and dance recitals and also just show up when they need to. That's going to be really important. And a lot of that costs no money at all. That's just getting the right people in place. That's getting the right environment in place, and a lot of that is stuff we already have available to us at the church.
When I look at reaching the preteens, and again, the burden does not lie on the church; the burden lies on the parents. So, are there, or do you recommend that there be a particular group of preteen parents that get involved with the youth minister to design and develop and to take a look at curriculum and just for an example, back in the felt board days, felt boards was what we used. Then we used the boards with erasable markers. All right. Then we went to VHS. Then we went to DVD. And now are we going to iPad? Are we going to some technology that we're introducing where we can actually participate or because there is the ability to buy at discount because of a church, because of education. Of the churches, either at the denomination level or at the church level, connecting with a list of recommended softwares or recommended have them downloaded and have those, invest in iPads and have the preteen class come in, grab their iPad. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. I completely agree with that. If you are able to, if we can help kids navigate technology in a way that helps them understand how they can be tools towards how they grow in their relationship with Jesus, that's going to be important, because most schools these days, they do show up and they get their iPad and their whatever. One of the things that is super important to realize with how kids think and how people think in general, the majority of people in the world are not auditory learners. Like 10% of the population are auditory only learners. The majority are visual kinesthetic. And so anytime that you can add a visual, add something that involves some sort of movement into the learning, you have grasping the information and remembering the information in a way that they will be able to connect with the rest of their life. And so when it comes to technology, that is a great way to do visual that if there's a story that you're talking about, it's not just now auditory learning, that there's an image on the screen or there's a YouTube video that you've pulled up that helps, take that learning further. That is so important, for them. If you have the Bible app and the Bible app is on those iPhones, you're going to teach them that while Bible at all times, if they have their phone, they can have the Bible with them at all times, and how they can learn that there are Bible reading plans for them to do their devotions, that there are, ways that they can look up. I have this question about who Jesus was in this moment, or what was happening in this story with David, and they can look it up, and why it's important to have a church in the context of your Sunday school programming is that you can help them discern which sorts of things they should be looking for. Because, you type in faith or you type in Jesus, you're getting like millions of hits of websites. And the top 5 probably paid money to have them show up first. But are those the ones we really want our kids looking at? And I think that's where, having the right leader in place and having the technology available for them to say, hey, so this one, you probably don't want to click on that because that's going to tell you, that's going to steer you sideways. Really, we want to in this conversation. So yeah, technology is super important.
For the parent that's struggling to connect with their preteen right now, what advice do you have for them to? And I can see the scenario is first it's condemnation, then it's punishment and restriction.
Yeah.
It goes through kind of an order where it becomes contentious, and it's because the parents they're losing control. You begin to lose control of the child. The schools support that, driving independent thinking, self-identity, all these new technologies, not new theologies or new social constructs that the child's bringing to the home, and the parents going, look, I don't care that they tell you that I'm supposed to call you a plural. All right, you're my son. Okay, you're my daughter. I'm going to call you Sheila. All right, and I don't care whether they call you Shosho at school. You're Sheila. You're Sheila at home, and that's what I'm going to call you. And the rules we make here go there. It's not the rules that they make there come here. So there is a rub.
There's some tension,
and especially in many of the major progressive and liberal communities that the educational system has followed. So California being one of them, where you have hundreds and you have millions of preteens that are being told things that don't wash at home. Don't meet the Judeo-Christian values, don't meet the biblical truth that we espouse. So what do we do? How do we approach, how do we open up and diffuse the dialogue and then introduce a new construct so that there is some wiggle room, some room to begin to expand the circle as opposed to choking the life out of the child?
Yeah, absolutely. For us, I mean, if for the parent who doesn't have a preteen yet, who's still in the early stages of childhood, and your kids haven't, you have preschoolers and young elementary kids, I would just start talking with them, and asking questions, and not from a place of I'm asking this question so I can, because I'm mad at you and I'm trying to catch you in something that you've done wrong. I think we need to come from an honest place of curiosity where we just really want to know what's happening in their world and what's happening in the different places where they are. Like if I drop them off at dance practice, I don't go into the recital hall. I don't know what happens there. So I am naturally curious about what's happening in these places. But like if you just have the preteen now, their guard is going to be up if we haven't done this before. So if this, we don't want it to be like to automatically put them on the defensive. It always needs to, they need to understand that regardless of what they're going to tell me when I ask them the question, that there is unconditional love and acceptance from me as their dad, and from, you know, my wife as their mom, and they're going to tell you some things that are going to completely rock your socks, and you are not going to understand. You're just going to, wait, that actually happened. Someone actually said that, and you're going to want to freak out on them. But every time they tell you one of those things, how you respond make or breaks how they tell you. Or and so what we need to make sure that we do is, like, if we're going to ask a question and we want an honest answer, we can't immediately say, I'm pulling you out of school. That's it. It's over. We're done. Like, it's the poker face. It's the, you can freak out on the inside, but you have to be loving and gentle on the outside. And that earns trust. And you just ask questions, and you ask these questions in a way that just gets them to talk, and just that, you know, you're just honest, and it's authentic. And if you do need to change, and you do realize that where they're at is not safe, and where they have to feel like they're part of, you know, where they can and need to feel like they're part of it. Like, how do you feel like this is the best place for you to be? And let them kind of help them come to the same conclusion that you've already come to. But remember, they're kids, and how they process information is not how you process information. So these are their friends, and these are their community. Whether we like it or not, we have to help them understand and discern, you know, what's happening. We're giving them skills for all of that. I'm a big, like, our kids are in the public school system where we live in Georgia. We've had a mostly great experience. But when it's not a great experience, we have to realize that we are the parent, and that we need to be involved, and we need to be calling administration. We need to be calling the school counselors, and we sign them out of health class, and we sign them out of, you know, some testing. You know, we're just not going to do that. We don't need to be there. We're going to have those conversations at our home, in our home, you know, at our church. But for the most part, you know, if we're willing to have conversations and realize that, like, they're in a mission field, and they're going to have to navigate this world anyway. So we just let's just talk it out, and let's help you figure out the best way to handle this. And communication is a key, you know, is for all of that.
Dan,
Yeah.
do you rate anywhere various programs or applications or sites? Is there a resource? I know that we have the movie rating system, we have the Rotten Tomatoes system. Is there a safe place for parents to go to check out that their child wants this particular piece of software or this particular game? Are there resources for them to go investigate beforehand so that they can make an intelligent decision?
Plugged In is a great resource.
What is it?
You've probably heard of Plugged In. Plugged In is a website with Plugged In, and there's some great resources there. I try to keep really good tabs on media. You know, I look at the Billboard Hot 100 songs. They come out every Tuesday. You can just look them up. Most of the time, they have an explicit lyric next to them for many of the top 10. And I'll listen to clips and snippets, and there is some homework that you need to do. There's no, like, one-stop shop for every sort of media. I think media is just changing so rapidly that it's just hard for anyone to keep up with it. But Plugged In is a great resource. Common Sense Media is a great source where, you know, they're trying to keep up with things. Social media is probably the hardest one to keep up with because there are new ones coming out all the time. There's a new one right now called TikTok that just came out, like, in the last few months. I started seeing I started seeing ads for it, and then I actually started seeing commercials when we were watching some shows on Hulu. There was an ad. I was like, "What is this TikTok?" And that one, you're not going to get reviews right away because it's brand new.
Right.
And we also have to realize, like, okay, my kids, like, they're not. I have control over whether they download something or not. Like, I have to approve it on my device before. So I can at least have a conversation with them and do some research.
Right. We've been talking with Dan Scott, author of Caught in Between, Engage Your Preteens Before They Check Out. A guide for you who has a preteen or a child who in the next year or so you can prepare yourself for how you're going to approach this pivotal period of time when you're raising the new consumer, the new influencer, and you read about this bullying, you read about these kind of negative stories, but there's also very positive stories to come out of it. And you can play an active role in raising up your child by knowing and equipping yourself with information like this. The book is called Caught in Between, Engage Your Preteens Before They Check Out. Author Dan Scott. You can find him at ignitinganation.com. Click on today's calendar, click on Dan Scott's name. It'll take you to a link directly to his book. Dan Scott, thank you for sharing this very valuable information with us here on
thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. God bless. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.